My wife's boss took her as his date and told me to stay out of the way. The whole room laughed at me. What nobody knew. That arrogant CEO was running a MY company, the one I built from nothing. And I had buried a legal bomb in the foundation 12 years ago. Time to detonate it. My name is Ryan Langley. I'm 52 years old, and until recently, I thought I had it all figured out. I co-founded CloudSync Solutions 12 years ago with a guy named Dominic Archer. We built enterprise software that helped companies manage their data infrastructure. Back then, it was just the two of us in my garage, living on coffee and ambition. Dominic brought the charisma and the sales pitch. I brought the architecture, the code, the systems that actually made the thing work. We split it 60-40, him in front, me behind the scenes. 5 years ago, my younger brother had a massive stroke. Someone had to manage his estate, take care of our mother who was sliding into dementia. I stepped back from the daily operations. Dominic offered what he called a gentleman's arrangement. Keep my shares, keep my seat on the paperwork, step away from the grind. I agreed. I was grateful, actually. What I didn't see was how quickly he'd start acting like the company was his alone. My wife Victoria, Tori to everyone who knows her, started at CloudSync 7 years ago as a project manager. Sharp, organized, the kind of person who could juggle chaos without breaking a sweat. I'd always admired that about her. Dominic promoted her fast. Too fast, maybe. She became his right hand, his go-to for client relations, his +1 at industry events. At first, I didn't think much of it. Business is business, right? Then came the quarterly investor dinner last Tuesday. We were at the Meridian, one of those places with white tablecloths and waiters who materialize out of thin air. Dominic sat at the head of the table like he owned the room. Maybe he thought he did. Tori sat 3 seats down, wearing a black dress I'd never seen before, hair pulled back, makeup precise. I was at the far end, smiling politely at a venture capitalist who kept mispronouncing iterative. Halfway through the main course, Dominic stood up, tapped his wine glass with a fork, and grinned at the table. Quick announcement, folks, Dominic said, his voice carrying that easy confidence he wore like cologne. Next month's Tech Summit in Austin. I'm taking Victoria here as my date for the VIP gala. She's earned it, and frankly, she's better company than half you guys. Polite laughter rippled around the table. The kind of laugh people give when they're not sure if it's funny or if their stock options depend on agreeing. He looked down the table at me, still grinning. Ryan, buddy, you understand. Just stay out of the way and let the professionals handle it. Then he winked. The room kept laughing. Tori didn't look at me. She just sipped her wine, eyes on her plate, like her silence somehow made her innocent. I smiled. Faint, controlled. The kind of smile you give when you've already made a decision, but nobody else knows it yet. A few minutes later, I excused myself to the restroom. But I didn't go to the restroom. I went outside, stood in the cold October air, and pulled out my phone. I opened the encrypted folder I've been building for 3 months. Photos, timestamps, expense reports, hotel receipts, text message backups from Tori's iCloud that she'd forgotten I had access to. I scrolled through them once more, just to be sure. Then I opened my contacts and typed a message to Patricia Dixon, the lawyer Dominic fired 4 years ago. It's time. Let's move. I hit send. That was the moment everything changed. Not when Dominic made his little announcement. Not when Tori stayed silent. But when I stopped being the guy who stayed out of the way and became the guy who built the trap. Story 2, Chapter 1, The Trade Show. They say hindsight is 20/20, but sometimes you see the train coming and convince yourself it's just a trick of the light. That's what I did for 8 months. I told myself the late night calls were about shipping manifests. I told myself the new clothes were about confidence. I told myself my wife of 17 years wouldn't throw away our family for a man who wore his arrogance like a designer suit. I told myself a lot of things. None of them were true. My name is Owen Rivers. I'm 54 years old, and I spent the last 16 years building something I thought was permanent. Rivers International Trade started in a cramped office in Long Beach with one shipping container of electronics from Shenzhen and a dream that probably should have stayed a dream. But I'm stubborn. I made it work. My partner Trevor Blackwood brought the overseas connections and the swagger. I brought the logistics, the customs knowledge, the operational backbone that kept products moving and clients happy. We split the company 60-40 when we formalized everything. Trevor took the spotlight. I took the spreadsheets. It worked until it didn't. 6 years ago, my father's Alzheimer's got bad. Really bad. Someone had to step up, manage his care, handle the family business he'd left behind. I pulled back from Rivers International, let Trevor run the day-to-day. He said I'd always have my stake, always have my voice. I believed him. That was my first mistake. My wife, Melissa, Mel to friends and family, joined the company 8 years ago. She handled client relations, spoke fluent Mandarin from her years teaching English in Shanghai, knew how to smooth over the cultural gaps that sank lesser operations. Trevor promoted her to VP of International Accounts 3 years ago. She traveled constantly. Hong Kong, Singapore, Frankfurt, Milan. Always with Trevor. I didn't ask questions. I trusted her. That was my second mistake. Last Thursday, we hosted a dinner for potential partners from a textile consortium out of Mumbai. Private room at Harborview. The kind of place where the menu doesn't list prices and the scotch is older than my youngest daughter. 12 people around the table. Mel sat near Trevor, laughing at something he said, her hand resting near his on the white linen tablecloth. I sat at the opposite end, making small talk with a factory owner who wanted to know if we could expedite container inspections. I was explaining tariff classifications when Trevor stood up, glass in hand. Before we talk business, Trevor announced, his voice smooth and commanding, I want to share some exciting news. Next month's International Trade Expo in Dubai, I'm bringing Melissa as my official representative for the VIP Executive Summit. She's earned this opportunity, and frankly, she's the best we've got. Heads nodded. A few people clapped softly. Trevor looked directly at me. Owen, you get it, right? Just stay out of the way and let us close these deals. You've been out of the game too long to keep up. He raised his glass. The table followed. Mel didn't meet my eyes. She just smiled at Trevor, touched her wine glass to his, and turned to charm the man on her left. I sat there, calm, nodding like it was all perfectly reasonable. But inside, something shifted. Not anger. Clarity. 20 minutes later, I stepped out onto the terrace, pulled out my phone, and opened the locked folder I'd been filling since February. Bank transfers to an account I didn't recognize. Hotel reservations under Trevor's name with a +1. Screenshots of texts Mel thought she'd deleted, but that lived forever in cloud backups. I scrolled through them slowly, methodically. Then I opened my email and typed a message to Sandra Hartley, the attorney Trevor pushed out of the firm 6 years ago when she questioned some of his more creative accounting. Sandra, it's Owen. I need your expertise. Can we meet tomorrow? I hit send. That's when everything started. Not when Trevor made his announcement. Not when Mel played along. But when I stopped pretending I didn't see what was right in front of me and decided to do something about it. Patricia Dixon's office was nothing like the corporate glass towers Cloud Sync occupied downtown. This was a converted brownstone in the Arts District, all exposed brick and dark wood, the kind of place where serious work happened without the theater. I arrived at 9, 15 minutes early. Patricia was already there, coffee brewing, files spread across a mahogany conference table that looked older than both of us. Ryan Langley, she said, extending her hand. Her grip was firm, confident. It's been what for years? For years, 2 months, I replied. Since Dominic threw that farewell party and misspelled your name on the cake. She laughed, sharp and genuine. Best day of my career, walking away from that circus. Now let's see what you've got. I set down my leather bag and pulled out 3 folders. Red, blue, black. Color-coded because I learned long ago that organization wins wars. Red folder, I said, sliding it across. Financial irregularities. Expense reports showing hotel bookings and meals charged to client acquisition that never resulted in clients. 17 instances over 8 months. Patricia flipped through, her expression neutral but her eyes sharp. Go on. Blue folder. Digital evidence. Text messages between Dominic and Tori discussing company restructuring plans, specifically how to minimize my influence and eventually buy out my shares at a fraction of their value. She pulled out her reading glasses, scanned the printed messages. This is from her iCloud? Family account. Legally accessible. My daughter helped me pull it. Smart kid. She gets it from her old man, I said. Black folder is the insurance policy. Original Cloud Sync incorporation documents. Clause 9C. Nobody's looked at it in a decade. Patricia read the clause once, then again. Then she looked up at me with something close to admiration. You wrote this. Paranoid younger version of me did. Thought we needed protection against exactly this kind of scenario. She leaned back in her chair. Ryan, this is airtight. If we can prove the relationship compromised company decisions, and these financials suggest it did, you can trigger a board review. Dominic's authority gets suspended. You step back in as interim leadership pending investigation. That's the idea. He's going to fight dirty. I'm counting on it, I said. Desperate men make mistakes. I've been patient for 5 years. I can be patient for 5 more weeks. Patricia smiled, the kind of smile a chess player gives when they see checkmate forming 6 moves out. When do you want to move? I need one more piece, I told her. My oldest son Brandon works directly under Dominic. I think he's involved in helping cover up some of the financial irregularities. If I can prove Brandon knew, that adds family betrayal to corporate fraud. Makes the story bulletproof. Her smile faded. Your own son? My wife's son, I corrected quietly. I found something last month. Medical records from 28 years ago. Turns out I was diagnosed with a fertility issue a year before Brandon was conceived. I had a DNA test done through one of those ancestry services. Brandon's not mine biologically. Patricia's expression shifted. Not pity. Understanding. Does he know? Not yet. But when this all comes out, he'll have to choose whose side he's on. And Tori will have to explain 28 years of lying. Patricia closed the folders slowly. This isn't just about the company anymore, is it? It never was, I said. It's about truth. And making sure the people who thought I was too quiet to fight back learn otherwise. She stood, walked to her window, overlooking the street below. I'll start drafting the board complaint. We'll need to move carefully, coordinate timing. If Dominic gets even a hint we're coming, he'll start shredding evidence. He won't see it coming, I assured her. He thinks I'm wallpaper. Background noise. That's his fatal flaw. Patricia turned back to me. One question, Ryan. When this is over, what do you want? The company? Your marriage? Revenge? I thought about that. I want what's mine. The company I built. The respect I earned. And I want everyone who bet against me to see exactly who they underestimated. She extended her hand again. Then let's get to work. I didn't go straight home after meeting Patricia. Instead, I drove to Cloud Sync headquarters, parked in the visitor lot, and walked in through the main entrance like I'd done 1,000 times before. The receptionist barely looked up. Hi, Mr. Langley. Here to see someone. Just dropping something off for Brandon, I said casually. He left some documents at the house. She waved me through. Security badge still worked. Muscle memory carried me to the elevators, up to the 8th floor where the operations team worked. Brandon's office was at the end of the hall, glass walls giving him a view of the bullpen where junior analysts hunched over monitors. He was on a call when I knocked. He looked up, surprised, then held up one finger. I waited outside, watching him through the glass. 28 years old, sharp suit, confident posture. He looked like Tori. Moved like her too. I'd raised him, taught him to throw a football, helped him with calculus homework, paid for his college. Never once questioned whether he was mine. Until last month, when that medical file turned up while I was organizing paperwork for my mother's estate. A fertility specialist report from 1996. Low motility, poor morphology, clinical recommendation against attempting natural conception. Brandon was born in early 1997. The DNA test confirmed what the timeline suggested. I was not his biological father. Brandon finished his call, stood, opened the door. Dad, what are you doing here? Thought I'd take my son to lunch, I said. You free? He glanced at his computer. I've got a meeting at 1. This won't take long. We walked to a cafe 2 blocks away, one of those places with exposed ductwork and overpriced sandwiches. Brandon ordered Turkey Club. I got coffee I didn't plan to drink. So what's up? Brandon asked after we sat down. I watched him for a moment, studied his face, looking for traces of myself, and finding none. I wanted to ask you about some expense reports I've been reviewing. Client acquisition dinners that don't match up with any new contracts. His expression flickered. Just barely. What expense reports? February through September. Your name's on about 6 of them, as the attending account manager. Restaurants in Santa Monica, Pasadena, once in San Diego. But when I cross-referenced our client database, none of those companies ever signed with us. Brandon set down his sandwich. Dad, I don't know what you're looking at, but those were legitimate meetings. Sometimes deals don't close. All 6 times. It happens. I pulled out my phone, opened a photo, slid it across the table. It showed an expense report, Brandon's signature at the bottom, right next to Dominic's. Date, July 23rd. Location, Il Cielo, Santa Monica. Amount, $1,800. I called Il Cielo, I said calmly. Asked if they had any record of a corporate reservation that night under Cloud Sink. They did. But it wasn't a client dinner, Brandon. It was a table for 4. You, Dominic, Tori, and someone named Jessica Carver. Brandon's jaw tightened. Jessica Carver, I continued, is a strategic consultant Dominic hired 6 months ago. According to her LinkedIn, she specializes in corporate restructuring and hostile takeovers. So I'll ask you again, what were you really doing at that dinner? He leaned back, arms crossed. You're digging into company business you're not involved in anymore. I'm still a co-founder, still on the incorporation documents, still have every legal right to ask questions. Dominic said you might start making noise, Brandon said quietly. He told me you've been struggling since Grandma passed, that you're looking for problems where there aren't any. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Dominic said that. Yeah, he's been looking out for you, Dad, trying to protect you from stress. I smiled without humor. And you believed him. Brandon shifted uncomfortably. I work for him. I see how hard he works, how much he's grown the company. Maybe you should trust that he knows what he's doing. I stood up slowly, left cash on the table for both meals. One more thing, Brandon. That fertility specialist report I found, the one for 1996, you might want to ask your mother about it. His face went pale. What are you talking about? Ask her, I repeated. Then I walked out, leaving him sitting there with questions he wasn't ready to answer. By the time I reached my car, my phone was ringing. Tori's name on the screen. I sent it to voicemail and drove toward Patricia's office. The pieces were falling into place. And soon, everyone would see the full picture. The board meeting was scheduled for Thursday at 10. I arrived at 9:15, early enough to watch everyone file in, but late enough that my presence felt deliberate. Patricia was already in the conference room on the 20th floor, setting up her laptop, laying out bound copies of documentation, like a prosecutor preparing for trial. Dominic walked in at 9:50, coffee in hand, that same swagger he wore like cologne. He saw me and stopped mid-stride. Ryan, didn't expect to see you here. I smiled calmly. Still a co-founder, Dominic. Still have board privileges. He glanced at Patricia, then back at me. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite worry. Not yet. Just calculation. This is a routine quarterly review, he said carefully. I know, I replied. That's why I'm here. The other board members filtered in. Carla Jensen, sharp-eyed and methodical. Our lead investor representative. David Park, the CFO who'd watched Dominic's creative accounting with growing concern. Michelle Torres, the operations director who'd been with us since year 2. And finally, Grace Hammond, the HR executive who'd filed 3 separate complaints about Dominic's behavior with female staff that mysteriously disappeared. Everyone took their seats. Dominic positioned himself at the head of the table, that high-back chair he'd custom-ordered to sit taller than everyone else. I sat near Patricia, hands folded, expression neutral. Before we begin the quarterly review, Patricia announced, standing up, we have a matter that requires immediate board attention. I'm here representing Ryan Langley in his capacity as co-founder, and we're invoking Clause 9C of the original incorporation agreement. Dominic's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. What clause? Patricia slid bound folders to each board member. Clause 9C addresses conflicts of interest involving co-founders and company personnel. Specifically, personal relationships that compromise fiduciary responsibility. Carla opened her folder. Her eyes widened slightly as she scanned the first page. What is this? Dominic demanded, his voice sharp now. Documentation, I said calmly, of your relationship with my wife Victoria Langley, who serves as your VP of Client Relations. Documentation of financial irregularities tied to that relationship. And documentation of your plans to restructure the company to minimize my ownership stake. The room went silent. Michelle Torres looked up from her folder, face pale. David Park flipped through pages, his jaw tightening with each one. This is a setup, Dominic said, but his voice had lost its certainty. Patricia tapped her tablet. Every phone in the room buzzed simultaneously. I've just sent you a comprehensive report. 37 pages. Bank records, expense reports, text messages, travel itineraries. all legally obtained, all verified. Grace Hammond spoke up, her voice cold. These hotel charges. February 14th, Valentine's Day. 2 rooms booked, 1 canceled. Both charged to company accounts as client development. I can explain that, Dominic started. Please don't, Carla interrupted. She looked at me, then at Patricia. What are you requesting? Immediate suspension of Dominic Archer's executive authority, pending full investigation, Patricia replied. Temporary transfer of CEO responsibilities to Ryan Langley as co-founder, and a forensic audit of all company finances for the past 18 months. David Park closed his folder. I second that motion. Wait. Dominic stood up, hands raised. You're going to believe a disgruntled ex-partner who's been absent for 5 years over the person who actually grew this company. I finally spoke again, my voice even. I didn't grow the company, Dominic. I built it. There's a difference. You've been living in a house I designed, and you forgot I still have the blueprints. Michelle Torres looked at Dominic, then at the documents. We need to vote. The vote took less than 3 minutes. For in favor of suspension. Dominic abstained. It was over. Dominic stood there, face red, hands shaking. He looked at me with something between rage and disbelief. You're making a mistake, he said quietly. I stood up, buttoned my jacket. No, Dominic. I'm correcting one. Tori was waiting when I got home that evening. Not in the kitchen or the living room, but in my office, sitting in my chair, phone in her hands. She'd been crying. Mascara streaked down her cheeks, but her eyes were hard. They suspended him, she said. Not a question. The board suspended him. I corrected. Pending investigation. She stood up, the chair rolling back. You planned this. All of it. I documented it. I replied calmly. There's a difference. Ryan, you don't understand. What Dominic and I have, it's complicated. I held up a hand. Stop. Please. Don't insult me by pretending this is some romance novel. You were sleeping with my business partner. You were helping him plan to force me out of the company I built. And you thought I was too checked out to notice. Her mouth opened, then closed. She tried another approach. The kids are going to be devastated. Emma knows everything, I said. She helped me gather evidence. She's known for months. Ashley will figure it out soon enough. And Brandon. I walked to my desk, pulled out a manila envelope, set it between us. What's that? Tori asked, her voice smaller now. DNA test results. Mine and Brandon's. You want to tell me why there's 0 genetic match? Her face went white, completely bloodless. She sat down hard on the edge of the desk. Ryan, I can explain. 28 years, Tori. You let me raise another man's son for 28 years. Who was it? Your boss before Dominic? Someone from college? Or does it even matter anymore? She started crying again, real tears this time. I was going to tell you. I just never found the right time. I laughed, bitter and short. 28 years wasn't enough time. I was scared. I thought you'd leave. I should have, I said. Instead, I stayed. I raised Brandon like he was mine. I built a life with you. And the whole time, you were lying. About him, about Dominic, about everything. She reached for my hand. I stepped back. Don't, I said. We're past that. So what happens now? She asked, voice breaking. Now, you need to leave. Tonight. There's a hotel reservation under your name at the Fairmont. Corporate card is still active for another 24 hours. After that, you're on your own. This is my house too. I pulled out another document. Prenuptial agreement. Section 7. In the event of proven infidelity, the non-offending spouse retains primary residence. Your signature is on page 12. She stared at the paper like it was written in a foreign language. You're really doing this. I'm really doing this. She stood slowly, grabbed her phone, walked toward the door. Then she stopped, turned back. Brandon's going to hate you for this. Maybe, I acknowledged, but at least he'll know the truth. That's more than you ever gave any of us. She left without another word. I heard her footsteps on the stairs, heard drawers opening and closing, heard the front door open and shut 30 minutes later. Then silence. I sat down in my chair in my office in my house, and, for the first time in 5 years, I felt like I was exactly where I belonged. I didn't expect the video to surface. Nobody did. But the internet has a way of remembering moments people would rather forget. It was Emma who showed it to me 3 days after the board meeting. She knocked on my office door, iPad in hand, expression somewhere between amused and angry. "Dad, you need to see this." The video was shaky, filmed from across a restaurant on someone's phone. The timestamp read October 15th, the night of the investor dinner. The quality was poor, but the audio was crystal clear. Dominic's voice. "Next month's tech summit in Austin. I'm taking Victoria here as my date for the VIP gala. She's earned it. And frankly, she's better company than half you guys." Laughter. Then his follow-up, looking directly at the camera's direction, at me. "Ryan, buddy, you understand. Just stay out of the way and let the professionals handle it." The wink. That arrogant wink. The video had been posted to TikTok 2 weeks ago by someone tagged as at Tech Gossip 415. It had 73,000 views. The comments section was brutal. "This is what toxic workplace culture looks like. Imagine publicly humiliating your business partner like this." That wife didn't even defend him. Yikes. Plot twist. The quiet guy probably owns half the company. Emma sat down across from me. "It's everywhere, Dad. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit." Someone figured out it was Cloud Sync and connected it to the news about Dominic being suspended. I scrolled through the comments. Someone had posted a follow-up linking to a tech industry blog that had covered the suspension. The headline read, "CloudSync CEO suspended amid fraud investigation. Co-founder returns after years of silence." "They're calling you the quiet genius who got his revenge," Emma said. "There's a whole thread on Reddit about corporate comebacks. You're kind of folk hero now." I set down the iPad. I didn't do this for attention. I know, but it's actually helping. 3 board members called this morning. Investors are backing you. Nobody wants to be associated with Dominic anymore. That video made him look like exactly what he is, a bully. My phone buzzed. A text from Patricia. "Have you seen the video? This is better than any PR campaign. Public opinion is completely on your side." Another text, this one from Ashley, my middle daughter. "Dad, I need to talk. Can I come over tonight?" I showed Emma the message. She nodded. She's been processing everything. Finding out about Mom and Dominic, about Brandon not being your biological son. It's a lot. You think she blames me? I think she's figuring out who to blame. Give her time. That evening, Ashley arrived at 7. She'd been crying. I could tell, but she composed herself before knocking. I let her in, made tea neither of us would drink, and sat across from her in the living room. I talked to Mom. Ashley said quietly, "She's staying at the Fairmont. She says you threw her out." I asked her to leave. I corrected. After she admitted to lying about Brandon's paternity for 28 years and helping Dominic plan to force me out of my own company. Ashley looked down at her tea. She said it was complicated. Betrayal usually is. Brandon's not taking this well. He called me yesterday. He's furious. Says you destroyed Mom's life over jealousy. I leaned back. "What do you think?" She met my eyes. "I think I watched that video 5 times. I watched Dominic humiliate you in front of a dozen people. I watched Mom sit there and say nothing. And I think about all those nights she came home late, all those business trips, all those times she told us you were being paranoid. I think I've been lying to myself because it was easier than admitting my mother is not who I thought she was." Her voice faltered on the last words. I reached across, squeezed her hand. "I'm sorry you're in the middle of this," I said. "I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner. Emma tried to tell me months ago." I called her dramatic. I told her she was imagining things. Ashley wiped her eyes. "I owe her an apology. She knows you love her. That's what matters." Ashley looked around the living room, at the family photos still on the walls. "What happens now? To us? Nothing changes between us," I assured her. "You're my daughter. I raised you. I love you. None of this changes that. Even though Brandon's not yours. Especially because of that. Biology matters less than choice. Brandon chose his side. You and Emma chose yours. Sophie, Connor's sister in the Rivers family, she chose truth. That's what defines family." She nodded slowly, then stood up and hugged me. "I love you, Dad. I love you too, sweetheart." After she left, I sat alone in the quiet house and realized something. The video that exposed Dominic's arrogance had become the spark. Public opinion, investor support, family reconciliation, everything was aligning. Not because I'd fought loudly, but because I documented quietly and waited for the right moment. Dominic had wanted to keep me out of the way. Now the whole world was watching me step back into the light. Brandon showed up unannounced on Saturday morning. I was in the garage, organizing tools I hadn't touched in months, when I heard his car pull into the driveway. He got out slowly, shoulders tense, and stood there for a moment before walking toward me. "We need to talk," he said. I set down the wrench I'd been holding. "Okay, let's talk." We went inside. I poured coffee. He didn't touch his. We sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd helped him with algebra homework 15 years ago, where I taught him how to tie a tie before his first job interview. "You had no right," Brandon started, his voice tight with anger. "No right to destroy Mom's career. No right to go after Dominic. And definitely no right to drag me into this with that DNA test." I listened calmly. Let him vent. "You've been gone for 5 years, Dad. 5 years where Dominic actually ran the company, where Mom actually built relationships with clients. You just swooped back in and ruined everything because you couldn't handle them being successful together. Are you finished?" I asked. He glared at me. "Yeah, I'm finished." I pulled out my laptop, opened a folder, turned the screen toward him. "This is expense report 2471. Date, July 23rd. Il Cielo Restaurant in Santa Monica. $1,800 charged to client development. Your signature is on it, right next to Dominic's." Brandon glanced at the screen. So I called the restaurant. It wasn't a client dinner. It was you, Dominic, your mother, and a woman named Jessica Carver. Jessica specializes in hostile takeovers. You want to explain why you were at dinner with a takeover specialist and didn't tell me?" His jaw tightened. "That's company business. Company business I'm legally entitled to know about as co-founder." I pulled up another file. Here's another one. August 14th. Nobu Malibu. $2,200. Same signatures. Another meeting with Jessica Carver. And here's the proposal she drafted. I showed him the document Emma had found in the company cloud storage. A restructuring plan that would dilute my shares to 15%, elevate Dominic to majority owner, and give Brandon a VP position with significant equity. "You were helping them push me out," I said quietly. "Your mother and Dominic were planning to take my company, and you were actively assisting." Brandon's face flushed. "You weren't even around. You left. Someone had to step up." "I stepped back to take care of family," I corrected. "My brother, my mother, your grandmother. And the whole time I was gone, you three were scheming to make sure I never came back. Dominic said you didn't care about the company anymore. Dominic lied about a lot of things, including the financial fraud, including his relationship with your mother, and you helped him cover it up." I paused. "Did you know about Pacific Gateway Solutions? About the 15% handling fees?" He shifted uncomfortably. "I knew we had a logistics partner." "Did you know Dominic owned it? That it was funneling money offshore?" Silence. "That's fraud, Brandon. Criminal fraud. You signed off on expense reports tied to it. You attended meetings where it was discussed. If the investigation finds you knowingly participated, you could face charges." His confidence crumbled. "I didn't know it was illegal. Dominic said everything was above board. And you didn't question it. You just trusted him." I leaned forward. "Here's something else you should know. That DNA test. It shows I'm not your biological father." Brandon went pale. "What?" "Your mother got pregnant while having an affair 28 years ago. I raised you thinking you were mine. She let me believe it for nearly 3 decades." He stared at me, speechless. "So here's where we are," I continued. "You helped commit fraud for a man who's not your father either, by blood or loyalty. You betrayed the man who actually raised you, who paid for your education, who taught you everything you know. And now you're sitting here defending people who used you as a pawn." Brandon stood up abruptly, the chair scraping back. "This is insane. You're making Mom sound like some criminal. Mom is a criminal. She committed fraud. She betrayed her husband. She lied about your paternity. These aren't opinions, Brandon. They're facts backed by documentation that's now with the authorities." He grabbed his keys. "I'm not listening to this anymore." "That's your choice," I said calmly. "But before you go, understand this. Emma and Ashley chose to stand with truth. They chose family over lies. You chose Dominic. You chose money and position over integrity. You're 28 years old, legally an adult. Whatever consequences come from that choice are yours to own." He looked at me with something like hatred. "You're not my father." "No," I agreed. "I'm not. But I was the man who raised you. And that meant something to me, even if it never meant anything to you." He walked out without another word. The door slammed. His car started, tires squealing as he backed out. I sat there alone in the kitchen, coffee cold, and realized I didn't feel loss. I felt relief. The truth was out. The lines were drawn, and everyone had chosen their side. 3 months later, the CloudSync board convened for what Patricia called the resolution meeting. The forensic audit was complete. The investigation had concluded. Now came the reckoning. I arrived early, as always. The conference room felt different now. Lighter somehow. The oppressive weight of Dominic's ego no longer saturated the air. Patricia laid out the findings. The audit identified $1.7 million in misappropriated funds, expense fraud, fictitious vendor payments, personal charges disguised as business expenses. Dominic Archer and Victoria Langley are named as primary perpetrators. Carla Jensen spoke up. What about Brandon Langley? Brandon knowingly participated in 12 separate instances of expense fraud. Patricia continued. He's been offered a plea agreement. Repayment of $73,000 plus resignation from all positions. In exchange, no criminal charges. I felt nothing hearing that. Brandon had made his choice. The district attorney is pursuing charges against Dominic and Victoria. Patricia added. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. They're looking at significant prison time if convicted. David Park leaned forward. What about CloudSync's future? That's why we're here, I said, speaking for the first time. I'm proposing a restructuring. Dominic's shares revert to me per the original Clause 9C. I'll assume full CEO responsibilities. We bring in new executive leadership with no ties to the previous administration. We focus on rebuilding trust with clients and employees. Michelle Torres nodded. I support that motion. The vote was unanimous. 5-0. Dominic was officially out. I was officially back. After the meeting, I stood at the window, overlooking downtown. Patricia joined me. How does it feel? She asked. Like I finally came home, I replied. That evening, Emma and Ashley came over for dinner. We cooked together, laughed together, felt like a family again. Halfway through the meal, Ashley's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, then at me. It's Brandon. He wants to know if he can talk to you. I thought about it. Tell him I'll be here when he's ready to take responsibility for his actions. Not before. She texted back, then set down her phone. He says he understands. Maybe someday Brandon would find his way back to truth. Maybe he wouldn't. Either way, I'd rebuilt what mattered. The company, my integrity, my relationship with the daughters who chose to stand with me. 2 weeks later, I was having coffee with a new client when I saw Tori across the street. She looked smaller, older. She saw me too, hesitated, then kept walking. I didn't call out, didn't wave. Just watched her disappear into the crowd. Some chapters close themselves. You don't need to write the ending. You just need to stop reading. 8 months after that board meeting, CloudSync had transformed. New executives, new culture, new energy. Revenue was up 18%. Client retention hit 94%. Industry publications were calling it one of the most successful corporate turnarounds of the year. I was in my office when Patricia called. The trial concluded. Dominic got 4 years federal prison. Victoria got 3 years plus restitution. Brandon's plea deal held. He paid back the money and avoided charges. Good, I said simply. There's something else. Dominic tried to reach out to you through his attorney. Wants to apologize. Ask for leniency recommendation. Tell his attorney no. Some things don't deserve forgiveness. They just deserve consequences. That weekend was Emma's 20th birthday. We threw a party at the house, the whole family. Emma, Ashley, even Rachel from the Rivers family who become friends with my daughters through the mutual experience of family betrayal. Ashley pulled me aside during the celebration. Brandon called again yesterday. He's in therapy. Says he's trying to understand why he made the choices he made. That's good for him, I replied. Therapy's important. He asked if you'd ever consider talking to him. I looked at my daughters, laughing together, building something new from what had shattered. Maybe someday, when he's truly taken responsibility, when he understands that betrayal isn't something you apologize away. It's something you rebuild from. Ashley hugged me. You did good, Dad. You fought for truth without becoming bitter. That takes strength. Later that night, after everyone had left, I sat on the back porch with a glass of whiskey I actually planned to drink. The house was quiet, peaceful. Mine. My phone buzzed. An email from the CloudSync board. They'd voted to rename the company. The new name, Langley Archer Technologies, with Archer struck through in the logo, leaving just Langley Technologies. A symbolic gesture, but meaningful. I'd started this company 12 years ago in a garage with a partner I trusted. I'd built it on innovation, integrity, and hope. That partner had betrayed everything we'd created. But the foundation held. The truth held. And I was still standing. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where my brother was buried. I hadn't been in months. I sat on the grass beside his headstone and talked to him like he could hear me. I did it, I said. I took back what was mine. Protected what you would have wanted protected. Made sure the people who thought they could steal from us learn otherwise. The wind rustled through the trees. Somewhere a bird sang. I wish you were here to see it. You always said I was too quiet, too passive. But you also said the quiet ones are the ones people underestimate. You were right. I stood up, brushed off my pants. Rest easy, brother. The family business is in good hands now. As I walked back to my car, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not just peace. Purpose. Cloud Sync, now Langley Technologies, was my legacy. Built twice. Once in hope. Once in truth. The second time was stronger. Because foundations built on honesty don't collapse when lies try to break them. They just reveal who is standing on solid ground all along.